Welcome back, and yes, we do actually have to talk about Paradox Interactive again. It's kind of crazy. I mean, not a month has went by over the last 9 without something appearing to go wrong over in Paradox Land. Be that Lamplighters League, City Skylines, their entire DLC policy with their grand strategy titles that, admittedly, it's amazing that if you love Hearts of Iron, that you can just play so much Hearts of Iron, and there will be so much DLC, adding so many different mechanics. Yet for players, you know, the obvious, it can really add up in terms of cost. Now, recently, we really hoped that things were beginning to turn, and that's because after having numerous problems, most notably, of course, City Skylines 2, they actually started delaying things. And that was awesome because the delay means that the developers have got more time to cook. And in so many of these cases, you literally have devs that are putting their heart and soul into a game project for 3 years. Can you imagine putting your all into something for 3 years and it just turns out, look, the plan that you cooked up 3 years ago or 2 years ago, it wasn't totally accurate, and we're now in a bit of a situation where the game needs an extension. And you could probably say, for both parties, it would make sense. Paradox will obviously make more money if they spend just a little bit more money to finish a game and then release one that's really good. And of course, that's good for the developer, because then their time doesn't, get screwed. And obviously that's good for the customer, because nobody wants to be left with a City Skylines 2 in their Steam library that they don't want to play. It really seemed good that they were delaying more titles, but now something really weird is happening. So we've been told that the developer of Prison Architect will be stepping away from the game 3 months before launch, and after a 6-month delay from its originally planned release date. It's weird. The maths do not add up here. It adds further questions to this whole Paradox thing, right? As of course we look at other games based on IP that Paradox have purchased, and you just start to think like, man, Paradox, I get that you guys, you need to make money, and that means you may have to make a few mercenary decisions, but at this point, it really does seem to be rather self-defeating. And you never want to be self-defeating. In fact, I'm going to be unself-defeating and say, hey, actually, if you would like to help us out, there is an amazing way to do that, and it is just to hit the subscribe and the like button. Those send a happy signal, basically, to the YouTube algorithm. It shows YouTube, like, good sentiment for a video, and that actually just helps our content get out there. It really does help us quite a bit. So ask for that, and in return, we're always trying as hard as we can to do better content, to be as consistent as we can. So yeah, we're cooking pretty hard to up our game. Anyhow, let's go and let's talk about this situation. So let's get into this with Prison Architect 2. Of course, Prison Architect was one of those games, I suppose in the RimWorld-like tradition. It was absolutely humongous way back in the day, like, I don't know, 2012. I remember watching it when I was in my late teens. It's one of those games that's really had an amazing long tail. Paradox then acquired the rights, and the plan has been to do a Prison Architect 2. Now, 3 months ahead of this game's launch in September, the original developer Double 11 are actually stepping away from the dev cycle, and they're handing it to their support studio, Koku. Or maybe it's Koku, but anyway, let's dive into this, because a switch in lead studios and a studio leaving a project a few months before launch after a delay, that is not happening if things are going well. So let's take first a bit of a step back and sum up what has gone on to date here, because rather similar to the whole Kerbal Space Program story, the backstory here is actually quite relevant. So, in 2015, Introversion Studios released Prison Architect from Early Access. It had been in Early Access for 3 years, and there was crowdfunding and all of that, and the game was an absolutely massive success. And, I mean, if you know it, you know it. It's a top-down prison management simulator. It's one of those games that, like with RimWorld, just gave you really good emergent storytelling, just good, deep, satisfying systems, but also a game that was, something that you could readily pick up on. It was always big in the Let's Play scene in YouTube. It was just a really great indie hit. Now, as a part of that launch, Paradox Interactive helped the team to port the game over to mobile. And then in 2016, Introversion partnered with Double 11 to do a console release of Prison Architect. But then in 2019, Paradox Interactive actually just bought the intellectual property. Introversion basically went on to do other things. I've got to imagine that Introversion had quite a lot of money saved up from the Prison Architect success, and they probably wanted to branch off in more creative directions. An example game here is Scanner Sombra, and it's really cool. It is basically a caving exploration game with, with some horror elements. Seems really cool. Unfortunately for them, it did not really seem to sell amazingly, and one of their more recent games that they've done after that, which is, I mean, it kind of reminded me of like an FTL and Factorio-like situation. It also doesn't seem to have sold super well, so don't really know like what's up there. They both look like really interesting games, but I suppose, look, it's really hard to get out there in the games market. But the thing I suppose you could say that had Being Mercenary the most value from that company was obviously the entire brand with Prison Architect. So what Paradox did is they decided to keep on Double 11, who are the people who had been helping Introversion on the other versions of the game. So they kept Double 11 on to maintain development of Prison Architect, and this resulted in 10 expansion packs. Yes, 10! From 2019 to 2023. And so far, that is the most Paradox thing ever, right? Have a really good game and just go DLC mad. And hey, if you're a super fan of Prison Architect, that meant you got loads more content, and that's probably quite great for you. But so far, so Paradox. Acquire IP, work with existing teams where you can, monetize in an ongoing manner to earn back the cost of your purchase of that IP. It then got real weird, because in January 2024, they announced that they'd be publishing Prison Architect 2, which looks like Prison Architect 2. Which is notably pretty different to Prison Architect 1. So yeah, no longer like the old art style. Now it's 3D isometric. For a lot of people though, they might be thinking, well, yeah, I see all this 3D stuff, but does that actually make the game more fun? And I suppose if you want an example there, many people would say, think of the Roller Coaster Tycoon games, back when those were 2D, and how the move to 3D, while it certainly did some really cool things, and riding your own ride was really cool, but there was obviously a cost to core gameplay with the move to 3D. So this was a pretty damn controversial thing. Now, this game, this sequel, would still be made by Double 11, right? Overall, like about a 4-year long dev cycle, I believe, and it was originally pitched for a March 2024 release. So, in the ideal timeline, we would have it already. But then it was delayed to May. Of course, we're in May right now, and it ain't coming out in May, it's actually coming out in December. Originally, I was kind of optimistic when I heard this, because I thought, okay, well, City Skylines 2 was an absolute shit show. Maybe Paradox have actually learned a lesson, and they are willing to go into a delay. But now what's happened is Double 11 are being replaced. And that is certainly an odd thing. They are being replaced with Koku, and they are a support studio that has worked on the game since last autumn and had actually supported the DLC development. Now, already, like, this is odd, but what's even more odd is how Paradox are talking about this. Here's what they said. With the sequel passing certification on all platforms, the contract was fulfilled. However, we could not find a commercial agreement that worked for both parties moving forward and mutually agreed to part ways. That's really odd. What happened? Now, there is a statement from the Double 11 game director, Gaz, that Koku had actually been lined up to take over since January. And it kind of suggested that the last few months have really been Double 11 getting Prison Architect into a state where they can pass certification, but basically that they were not expecting to stay on past that point. Now, this is just weird. There is nothing actively malicious about this or even suspicious. It's just really weird, right? It is normal for contracted work to be done up until a certain point, and it's not unreasonable to assume that the Brazil-based Koku would likely be a far cheaper bunch of people to retain than Double 11, a studio that is in the UK. But I guess the thing here is that outside of the mercenary decision-making, this is giving people flashbacks. It's giving people flashbacks to the likes of Kerbal Space Program 2, and quite a few sequels that have happened over, over the past few years, as well as some other Paradox products. Take Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. That is a game where another studio worked on contract on an IP that Paradox had purchased, and whether because of, publisher fiat, divergence from the original, or whatever, they simply could not make a game that it seems the original audiences liked, and that obviously led to things changing with Paradox, then going on to do Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 in-house. So I guess we can presume then that Koku are going to be working to polish this, to finish the game, I suppose, to make sure that it launches well. Like, if it's past console certification, that does mean that there are certain, bars of function that it does pass. But overall, this is weird, and it's a direction for Prison Architect 2 that people who are fans of the original are really quite just, deeply skeptical of, frankly. Like, going through people's reactions to that reveal trailer trailer in January, a lot of them were not pretty. But I suppose for the new developers, they could be left in a strange situation where they are replacing a likely far more expensive British studio to work in this game. So they're replacing them. They're kind of picking up, they're picking up the bag from somebody else, even though they had helped on the IP before. And maybe they'll just be left kind of suffering for art and gameplay design changes that were really made by other people, but at the end of the day, they're the people who, obviously needing to pay staff and have work, have taken on the contract. So a bit of a weird situation, and it does mean that Prison Architect fans may be a little bit confused at this, because if there's a Prison Architect 2 and you don't like it, but Prison Architect 1 does exist, then it puts the developer in a bizarre situation. Because if you then just go back and make Prison Architect 1 content, it's a tacit admission that Prison Architect 2 is just not a game that has legs. I mean, it isn't. It hasn't came out yet, but it risks being a situation similar to that of Payday 3, where Payday 3, pretty different game actually in some ways to Payday 2, but most importantly, a lot of the lessons of Payday 2 hadn't been learned. The humongous wealth of content from Payday 2 was obviously, there was not content parity there. So that puts Starbreeze in a crazy situation where Payday 2 is being played more than Payday 3. Now, obviously, they see Payday 3 as the future of their company, so they're going to want to fix Payday 3 and make content for Payday 3. But if they want money now, they would probably be better served by making content for Payday 2. But maybe they'd be worried that that is just staying off the inevitable and that they need to just make draw a hard line in the sand and bring people over to Payday 3. Valve got around this problem by just deleting CSGO and replacing it with CS2, which is certainly one way to do it, which was a little bit controversial at the time, but you look at the player numbers, it certainly did work, didn't it? Anyway, that's it for today's video. A bit of a check-in with Paradox. Let me know what's going on here, and if you are somebody closer to this situation who understands it better than, I haven't seen anybody get a real big scoop in this. Do reach out. I think this one is quite in the public interest, just given that it's a sequel to a very beloved game that people will have put hundreds, maybe thousands of hours into. I suppose a little bit like the Kerbal Space Program 2 situation. And I think people who have been, fans of a game franchise for such a long time, they do deserve to be listened to and to sort of understand what's going on. Because again, nobody wants something like the Kerbal 2 situation, because that thing is just so goddamn sad. Anyway, that's it from me, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Of course, I will be back with another one tomorrow, so I will see you then. And if you want to give us a bit of a hand on the way out, I'd appreciate it if you click the like and sub button. Anyway, see you later.